Hello, everybody. So, the topic for the day is sustainability before it had a name. And I'm here to talk about my topic is the celestial guide to the sustainability. Now, you might wonder, what has sustainability got to do with astronomies? What is astronomy? Just about stars and patterns in the sky, asteroids, comets. What do they have to do with sustainability on Earth? It looks, it may not seem very evident today. Today, we rely on something very easy, like a calendar, or like let's say during the months of June, July, we have something that is very peculiar to our subcontinent, which is the monsoons. Right now, at this time of recording this TED talk, we are just ending the winter and moving into spring, and eventually we'll get into summer. Usually, summers are meant to be really harsh for everybody to be venturing out, like for example in the desert regions. But for us, when we think of June, July, it's not just the summer that we think of. We have something that is calming our summers down. What does calm our summer down? It's the monsoons. It's lucky for us just in time as the summer is for us, the monsoon is coming in just to give us respite. Okay, now how do we predict monsoons? We know the monsoons come in the first week of June. It hits the Kerala first. I'm talking about, of course, the southwest monsoon. It hits Kerala and slowly moves into the other parts of the country. But today we know when the monsoon onsets because we have weather predicting models. We have IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, that tell us the exact onset of the dates of the monsoon. And also we know when the monsoon will end. And also we have a calendars that tell us the dates on when the rains will increase or decrease. But imagine 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, we still had our monsoons. We had our monsoons, but what were we missing? We were missing these weather predicting models. We didn't have satellites up in the sky that were predicting the patterns, that were predicting the changes in the pressure or the cloud cover. But yet, our ancestors still survived, did survive the monsoon. How did they know? How did they know the monsoon, when the monsoons would arrive? And this is where astronomy comes in. Okay. So I'll talk about the connection to the sustainability at the end of it. But let's first understand how our ancestors used the stars and patterns in the sky to predict the onset of monsoon. Because remember, we didn't have a very clear scientific way of predicting the monsoon. We didn't have the weather prediction models, nor the calendars that we use today. Now, how did they do it? There's only one thing that we could rely on, which is the patterns in the sky or the stars. Now, you might wonder, how can stars tell us when the monsoons would arrive? Now we know we are in the month of January at the end of it. When we look up at the sky in the evening time after the sun is set, you see a beautiful set of stars, patterns like some of the constellations like Orion, Taurus. Some of these constellations are very prominent in the evening sky. But if you see a few months later, probably in March or probably even in June, July, you don't these see the same set of stars in the sky. In June, July, of course, if you see the same time, let's say you step out after the sunset, you look up at the sky, you see a new set of stars. You'll see probably Sagittarius, Scorpio. Now, what happened to Orion? Right now, today, Orion is visible, but 6 months later, Orion is not visible. So, something is changing in the sky. The patterns in the sky change through the year, through the months. Now, our ancestors wondered, does this pattern of change in the sky repeat, or is it very erratic over the years? But luckily for them, they found these patterns were extremely similar. Every year in January, if you look up at the sky after sunset, Orion was up there. And every year in July, if you looked up at the sky after sunset, Scorpio or Sagittarius were there. So they could predict what month they were in by looking at the skies. So now, of course, there are other ways to tell whether it's winter or summer or spring. What are the other ways in which we can tell? Temperatures. If you feel for several long days the weather is really cold, you know you're in winter. And if the temperature starts slowly rise, you know the winter is ending and spring is coming in. And the temperatures really go up, you know, are in summer. That's one way of knowing the seasons begin and when the seasons end. But that's not a very reliable way because the temperatures can be affected by local phenomenon as well. On any given day, the weather could be cold, even on a summer day. So that's not a reliable way to predict patterns. But what is something that can be relied upon? The patterns in the sky. So when you see a certain set of stars in the sky, you can be pretty sure it is winter. Okay. And another set of stars you can be pretty sure it is summer. Now, how did our ancestors use this to predict monsoon? We know today when the monsoons arrive, it's in the month of June. Now, all you have to do is, of course, we were not there recording 5,000 years ago what our ancestors was doing, but we can, with great confidence, predict or understand based on the literature and based on what we see in the sky today, try to understand what they were doing 5,000 years ago. And if you look at the skies today in the evening hours, in June, not in this month, but in June after sunset or just before sunrise, the sun rises by around, in June is the summertime, right? The days are going to be longer. The sunrise is going to be earlier. But just before sunrise, if you see, probably around mid-June or 21st of June, we call it the summer solstice, you'll see a certain set of stars in the eastern sky just before the sun would rise. And one star that they observed was a star called Aldebaran. In Tamil, you call it Rohini Nakshatra. Rohini, in English, it's called Aldebaran. And they would see just rising before the sun would come, probably few minutes apart. And whenever they could see the star in the sky, they know the monsoon is about to begin. And they did not do it just by observing it for a year. Year on year, whenever they see the Rohini Nakshatram in the sky just before sunrise, they know the monsoon is on set. And eventually, as you drift into the mid-June or late June, they'll see another star also rising. It's called Tiruvadare Nakshatram or Betelgeuse. Okay, when they see Betelgeuse is up in the sky, they know it's peak monsoon. Okay, so just by looking at the stars, which stars rise and which stars, set later, they know when the monsoon will begin and when the monsoon will peak. What is the next stage of monsoon peaking? The withdrawal of the monsoon, right? And they also had another star that would talk about the withdrawal of the monsoon. It's a star in English called Canopus. In Tamil, we call it Agathir or Agastya star. When you spot Agastya star or Canopus in the sky just before sunrise, it's usually in the late August or early September, means the monsoon has withdrawn. Again, there's a famous saying like, Agastya rises in the sky to calm the weather. Okay, that's the story that people have built in the earlier times. Of course, today we don't look up at these stars to predict the monsoon because we have much better ways of doing it. Back at time, the skies were like a massive clock with huge accuracy that happened year on year to predict this. It's a three stars. Remember, one is the onset of the monsoon, that is Rohini Nakshatram or Aldebaran. Second is the peak of the monsoon where Betelgeuse or Tiruvadare would come into picture, and the retreat of the monsoon, which is based on the star Canopus. Okay, also called as the Agastya star. Okay, now this is very interesting, and this is happening for many years, for centuries and millennia, of course. But the same pattern, do you think Indians or in only the Indian subcontinent this would have happened? So civilizations across the world would have relied on the skies to predict their own weather patterns. And there was another interesting example. I think probably this is one of the greatest example of astronomy and sustainability and predicting the weather. It happens in Egypt. I'm sure all of you know of the river Nile. Okay, Nile used to flood like crazy floods. Every year, the Nile used to flood in the month of June, July, August, September until October. Of course, today the Nile does not flood anymore because we have built dams. To prevent the flooding, we've come up with this master idea of building dams to check the water flow, regulate the water flow. But back several thousand years ago, there was no dams to check things in place. So River Nile would flood. Okay, and that River Nile, all of you know, any civilization is built around the rivers for groundwaters, agriculture, and many purposes. Rivers drove the civilizations. And it's very important to know when the River Nile would flow, peak, and dry out. Without understanding the pattern of the flow of the River Nile, the civilization could not sustain. Now, again, we need to know when the River Nile would flood. We didn't have a weather predicting model, just like how we didn't have one for the southwest monsoon. And what would they relied on? The stars. And what star did they pick up to predict the onset of the flooding of River Nile? It's a very famous star. It's also known as the dog star. It's called the star Sirius. Some of you might know Sirius from the famous Harry Potter franchise, the Sirius Black. Sirius is the star that's the brightest star in the sky. And if they could spot Sirius just before sunrise, that would mean the river Nile is about to flood. And that's the onset. It begins in the early months of June. Okay, and eventually the river Nile would flood. Of course, flooding is not the time where you can do agriculture. Flooding is a time where you have to be safe. Like all the river waters are going, the water levels are going to rise. It's a sign that you have to vacate the banks of the river, move to a higher land so that the water can wash down. And where does the Nile get its water from? It's from Ethiopian highlands. The Ethiopian highlands get their monsoon at almost the same month as us in June. And once the rains in Ethiopia hits very hard, it flows down to the river Nile, and the river Nile floods. But the beauty of it is when the river flows from Ethiopia to down towards the rains flow down through the Nile, it brings in a nutrient rich soil that is perfect for agriculture. So they would wait for the river Nile to flood out to sort of retreat. The moment it retreats, the moment it retreats, the soil is now fertile. It's also wet, but also it is not filled with heavy flowing water. And that's the right time to get in and sow your plants, do agriculture. And by the time the river completely dries out, it's time to harvest. You call this a rising of Sirius or any rising of an object just before sunrise as heliacal rising of an object. So Sirius played a major role in the weather or the civilization of the people of who lived around the Nile River. And this happened every single year repeated. Okay, of course there are some minor nuances because of leap years, because we didn't have the idea of leap years back then, but it was offsetting a little bit every year. But ignoring that part, it was more or less predictable every year. The entire life revolved around the star Sirius. Okay, and that's how. Okay, now what is this do has got to do with sustainability? Now, the way we understand sustainability is very important. It's a circular economy, right? So you make sure you build certain things, and to build anything, it could be your computers, it could be your chairs, it could be a mic that I'm speaking. It all requires, it could be your mobile phones or laptops. It requires raw materials. Okay, as long as you can maintain a system that does not run out of your raw materials to build things, then you are sustainable. If you're using something as a raw material to build something, but eventually you know the raw materials are going to run out, it's not a sustainable model. Okay, so a lot of things drive running out of things. Okay, one is accelerated use of things, unnecessary or like overuse of things could run out of the raw materials. Okay, so now thinking about this circular economy, ima- remember this river Nile, it flows during a particular season and it runs out. Okay, until it gets enriched the next year in the month of June by what? The monsoons again. Okay, now what we've done, we need water through the year. Why do we need water through the year? There are some rivers that are perennial. Okay, there are some rivers are naturally perennial, but some rivers are not naturally perennial. They only run through certain seasons. The other seasons they are dry. But human needs have grown so much that we need water throughout the year. How do we ensure water throughout the year and not just on one season where there is monsoon or rains? When there is monsoon or rains, there's a lot of water. We don't need as much water as the rains bring in. So we store the water. We store the water using a dam. And once the season has gone dry, we release the water that is part of the reservoir that was formed out of the dam, and we slowly consume. We regulate the flow of water using a dam, ensuring the river flows through, comes to us through the year. But imagine 5,000 years ago when people were relying on the Nile River. Did they have a dam? No. Fortunately, no. So they had to rely specifically on those months for agriculture so the rest of their lives can carry on. Okay. So they didn't have a dam that could ensure the supply throughout the year. When you have water throughout the year, which means you can sow more, you can agriculture, do more agriculture, more food. When you have more food, what is the next thing that come to your mind? The population can increase. But if you cannot ensure food throughout the year or more food, your population has to be in check. So the populations were maintained. The water was just about what is needed to sustain that population. Population could not grow beyond the point. If population cannot go beyond the point, our needs are going to be in checks and balances. It was a natural way of sustaining things without humans interfering anything at all. What nature gave us, we used it. We didn't need more, and that was the natural way of living. And that is the connection between astronomy and sustainability. How again? Let me repeat. We needed a clock to keep track of things. Skies were the clock, and they were very predictable. They were not behaving erratic. So I think these two examples, the monsoons in our country and the Nile River in Egypt, give us an insight into how our ancestors lived their lives in sync with nature without running out of things. And one more thing, lastly, I would like to say, remember the river Nile flowing from the Ethiopian highlands? They used to bring nutrient rich soil, okay, and deposit in the Nile river bed. That was useful in farming and everything. But today, another dam has been built. It's called the Aswan Dam. In 1970s, it was built. And, and after this dam has been built in across the river Nile, the Nile no longer floods. The flooding of Nile has stopped because we've trapped it, built into a big reservoir. Now, what has happened because of this is the nutrient-rich soil is unable to flow down the river. The water is able to flow through the year, but the nutrient-rich soil is unable to flow, making farming difficult. So what have we relied upon now? Artificial fertilizers and chemicals to reap the same benefits that was once gained without any human intervention. So we think the dams are a huge benefit. Yes, it is. It solves a lot of our critical needs, but we do lose a lot of nature, what it once provided us easily, or we have to get it very hard because of these human interventions. So that's the connection between astronomy and sustainability, even before we knew. Of course, the people in the past wouldn't have known that they're doing a sustainable practice because that was their life. Today, sustainability has become a name because we know we've lost it. We're trying to get back, so we've named it and trying to get back to the old ways. That's all. Thank you very much.